Welcome to Warhammer 40k lore in the Bible, where I pull from Warhammer 40k lore to help explain biblical lore. And today we're going to be talking about the Lamenters. But before we get into the video, take the wikis with a grain of salt, and I am not a lore expert. I also have two other channels. One is a comedy series and a react channel. So if you want to check those out, those will be in the description. And the way my content works is we do Warhammer 40k lore first, then we get into the biblical lore, and then we come back to Warhammer 40k lore at the end. All right. And if I've earned a like and subscription, please consider doing so, as that is what pushes the video out there. And I thank you all for supporting me, so thank you. So let's get started. The Lamenters are an unfortunate loyalist chapter of Space Marines, which, perhaps more than any other chapter of the present era, seem to have been cursed by a shadow that has long determined its fate. The Lamenters' accursed and haunted legacy seems to have tainted much of what they have achieved, and their victories often become bitter ashes in their hands. The Lamenters are a successor chapter of the Blood Angels, created during the 21st Cursed founding, and seem to have eliminated the gene C flaws known as the Black Rage and the Red Thirst through unknown means. But this secret cure may have been lost along with the chapter. Figures, huh? The Lamenters have had a tumultuous, often fraught history. They have twice been brought to the very brink of destruction, first during the Badab War and later in battle with the overwhelming horror of the Tyranids. Each time they have endured, despite inherent instabilities in their chapter's gene seed, and their chapter master claims that every travail they have overcome, the Lamenters have only grown stronger. Now we're getting to the chapter history. The Lamenters were raised during the cursed 21st founding of Space Marine chapters in the early 36th millennium. The matter of the curse pertaining to the exact nature of this founding has long since become shrouded in secrecy and myth. The various dark ends that have befallen many of this founding's chapters have entered the lore of the Inquisition and the Adeptus Astartes alike. Many consider those chapters created under the auspices of the cursed founding as tainted from their very creation. The Lamenters are believed to have been created from the Blood Angels' gene seed, genetically modified by the Adeptus Mechanicus tech priests on Mars to remove the effects of the Blood Angels' genetic flaws, known as the Black Rage and the Red Thirst. However, the Astartes of the Lamenters chapter are noted to suffer from a kind of mental melancholy, although it is unclear if this is due to some unexpected flaw in their gene seed, or if it simply is the result of the unfortunate events that have repeatedly befallen the chapter. Although the chapters are numbered among its brethren, those few Astartes descended from Sanguinius to be spared an ultimate de-evolution into something no longer human or sane. The mark of the flaw was still upon the Lamenters in the eyes of their fellow Space Marines, many of whom chose to shun the chapter, regardless of its undoubted loyalty to the Emperor of Mankind and his Imperium, its noble efforts in the defense of its people. During the early 37th millennium, matters worsened for the Imperium as corrupted Astartes of the 21st founding and other dissident forces rose up against the rule of the Emperor in a series of red misty wars and purges. The Lamenters chose to depart to the Imperium's fringes rather than risk internecine conflict with their fellow Astartes of the 21st founding. They used their mobility as a fleet-based chapter to crusade against the enemy without, rather than become ensnared in the quagmire of civil conflicts within the Imperium. For the next millennium and a half, the Lamenters would remain on a continuous Imperial crusade, conducting many campaigns against the various xeno species that plagued mankind across the western reaches of the galaxy. Often the chapter was recorded as intervening to aid isolated imperial worlds under threat. Despite their enviable record of honorable victories and valiant defense of the Imperium's far-flung domains, the specter of misfortune seemed to dog them at every turn. Dark rumors began to grow and surrounded them as time and again the chapter suffered from bitter reversals and dark turns of fate, even when they were recalled into the interior of the Imperium, along with a number of other crusading chapters by the High Lords of Terra in the 30th or 39th millennium to help deal with the rising threat of incursions from the Eye of Terror. Many Imperial commanders and other Space Marine chapters continued with them with the suspicion. The Lamenters' reputation often worked against them, but rarely with such consequences as during the chaos attack on the hive world of Corella during the Ninth Black Crusade. The superstition-bound Mortifactors chapter refused to fight alongside the Lamenters, abandoning the planet rather than serving beside them. The Lamenters were unwilling to desert the Corellian population, holding out alone against the warbands of the Black Legion for 6 solar weeks, suffering horrendous losses until the Ultramarines and the White Scars led a battle group that broke through the Chaos Warfleet's blockade to relieve Corella. The Lamenters chapter had been reduced to barely 200 surviving Astartes by the time they were relieved by their fellow Space Marines. The Lamenters were deemed lost when their fleet disappeared into a warp storm soon afterwards, only to reappear more than a standard century later on the edge of the Segmentum Solar, having slowly battled their way back from the outer void. Once again, the Lamenters returned to full strength after slowly rebuilding their fleet and chapter ranks. They now operated as a crusade force near the galactic core, and were soon requested by the High Lords of Terra to form part of the defenses of the sorely pressed Maelstrom Zone in 587 in the 41st millennium, as one of the chapters that served as Maelstrom Warders. That might be a future video down the road, but anyways, their duties to patrol the wide expanse of the desolate wastes of the Maelstrom's western zones, responding to the neutralizing chaos and piratical threats as they were encountered, a duty the chapter took to the great fervor. During this time, the Lamenters became close allies with the Astral Claws, who held the strategic command of the Maelstrom Zone, and fought alongside them in many of their greatest battles. The Astral Claws chapter, under its last chapter master, Lufthuron, offered the Lamenters a degree of honor and respect they had seldom received before from their fellow Astartes, as well as war material which to build and maintain the chapter's strength. It would be this friendship that the Lamenters were so unaccustomed to, and the ties of red mist spilt in the battle alongside the Astral Claws that would ultimately prove to be the chapter's undoing. Alright, now we're getting into the biblical side of things here, and sorry for the jump cut there. I ranted on something we already talked about through the whole wiki, so I'm just cutting it out, and we're starting here now. So, Job chapter 1. Now, I was told that the Lamenters was actually based off of the book of Job, so that's why I'm doing Job here, and it fits somewhat. Alright, so Job chapter 1. There was a man in the land of Uz, whose name was Job. So there are people who do say that Job is actually a pre-flood book. So that's interesting, but I don't know. I can't tell you on that. And that man was perfect and upright. And this word perfect here, it just means he kept the ways of God to the best of his ability. It's not like, Jesus is perfect, right? That had no sin. It just means he kept the ways of God to the best of his ability. So, and that feared God and eschewed evil means he turned away from evil. And there were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. His substance also was 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 she asses, and a very great household. So that this man was the greatest of all the men of the East. So he was pretty elite, I guess you can say, right? And his son went and feasted in their houses, everyone his day, and sent and called for their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. Something very, I would say, gross is going on here, okay, in this verse right here. So these sons are eating and drinking with their sisters a lot, let's just say. Okay. And it was so, when the days of their feasting were gone about, that Job sent and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning, and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. So he's offering sacrifices to all the daughters and the sons, right? Because they're doing something bad, we'll just say. According to the number of them all. For Job said, "It may be that my sons have sinned, and cursed God in their hearts." Thus did Job continually. So he's continually having to do this because, the sons are cursing God, and they're bumping and grinding with their sisters, let's just say. Gross, which is very much against what God has said, right? Very much against it. And, sorry. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. Now, remember in Genesis 6, where it says the sons of God came, to boink, the daughters of men. That's what it's talking about. It's talking about angels, right? It's not talking about kissing cousins, as you'll hear some people in the mainstream church say. It's talking about angels. So now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, "Whence camest thou?" Then Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it." So he's not just in hell, right? The Bible calls him the prince of the power of the air, right? But anyways, now this is where you see the Father in God, right? Because just like all of us, we want to brag about our kids, right? That's what he's doing here. And the Lord said unto Satan, "Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth? A perfect," see, there's the word perfect again, means he's following the ways of God, and an upright man. As you can see, it's followed up by upright. Okay. And one that feareth God and eschewed evil. Then Satan answered the Lord and said, "Did Job fear God for naught?" I want you to pay attention to this hedge part here, okay? Because you'll notice that the sons and daughters, they don't have a hedge, right? But they have protection because of Job, and I'll give you verses that support that. But anyways, "Hast not thou made a hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side, that thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land." Okay. Let's get some supporting verses to support this. So 1 Corinthians 7:14. "For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now they are holy." So, having a believer, let's say as a spouse, sanctifies that other person. So there's this hedge, right, that's protecting, even though he's not a believer, but it's protecting them, right? Here's even more. Now, here's where the destroyer shows up again. Now, I also going to talk about the destroyer in some other verse, but anyways, Exodus 12:23. "For the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians, And when he seeth the red mist upon the lintel, and on 2 side posts, the Lord will pass over the door, and will not suffer the destroyer to come into your house to smite you. And we're going to see, actually, I'll bring it up now. So this is Job, right? Who's causing the havoc, right? Okay. The wicked man travaileth with pain, and I'm sorry, this is Job 15, 20 and 21. So the wicked man travaileth with pain all his days, and the number of years is hidden to the oppressor. You'll see the destroyer, right? But anyways, a dreadful sound is in his ears. In prosperity the destroyer shall come upon him. He believeth not that he shall return out of darkness, and he is waited for the sword. He wandered abroad for bread, saying, where is it? He knoweth that the day of darkness is ready at hand. Trouble and anguish shall make him afraid. They shall prevail against him, as a king ready to battle. So, here's the destroyer again, right? So you see it in Exodus. And of course, as I've said, it's the Assyrian, right? That Assyrian guy that I've been talking about. He's the destroyer. But he shows up here, right? Anyways, never mind. So let's keep going with Job here. Okay. Put forth thine hand now, and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, behold, all that he hath is in thy power. Only upon himself put not forth thine hand. But as you see, the sons and daughters don't have that. They could have had a hedge of protection, right? If they would have listened to what Job was saying and not screw off, let's just say, lack of a better term, with their own sisters, by the way. Like, shame on them, but anyways. Okay. For thy hand and touch all that he will, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, behold, all that he hath is in thy power, upon himself put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. I'm sorry, I reread that. And there was a day when his sons and his daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. There they are again. And there came a messenger unto Job and said, the oxen were plowing, and the asses feeding beside them. And the Sabaeans fell upon them and took them away. Yea, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, the fire of God is fallen from heaven, and hath burned up the sheep and the servants, and consumed them. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking. So I want you to pay attention to this. Lord is saying, behold, all that he hath is in thy power, right? So Satan is the one who's causing all this, right? But not only that, who's the destroyer, the one who destroys, right? Here, you know what? I'll bring it up. Okay. Hold on a second. Here we go. Isaiah 10:7. Or you know what? Right. So 5. O Syrian. There he is. The rod of mine anger, and the staff is in their hand is mine indignation. I will send him against a hypocritical nation, and against the people of my wrath will I give him charge, to take spoil, to take prey, and tread them down like the mire of the streets. Howbeit he meaneth not so, neither doth his heart think. By the way, the Assyrian is not a good guy. By the way, he's a bad guy. I do want to get that out there. So, howbeit he meaneth not so, neither doth his heart think so, but it is in his heart to destroy and cut off nations, not a few. So, that's what he does. He destroys. Okay. So, and the Sabaeans fell upon them, and they took them away. We just saw that's what he does, right? But anyways. And there came... Okay. While he was yet speaking, there came also another, and said, The Chaldeans made out 3 bands, and fell upon the camels, and have carried them away. Yea, and slain the servants with the edge of the sword. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another, and said, Thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And behold, there came a great wind from the wilderness, and smote the 4 corners of the house. And it fell upon the young men, that they were deleted. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. So, they didn't have that hedge of protection. They could have, and this wouldn't have happened, right? But anyways, I digress. And Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell down upon the ground and worshipped and said, Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord had taken away. Blessed be thy name of the Lord. So I kind of want to, explain this a little bit, right? So we saw last week Michael's guarding up against chaos, right? What happens when he stands up? It, hell breaks loose, right? Well, God has that hedge of protection over you, right? But he can take that away. And look what happened, right? And yeah, anyways, I won't bring that up. So, and it says, And all this Job said not, nor charged God foolishly. So, and again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And I wonder if the Assyrian is among here, but it doesn't give you that, but I just wonder. And Satan came also amongst them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said unto Satan, From whence comest thou? Satan answered the Lord, and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job? And there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and eschewed evil. And still he holdeth fast his integrity, although thou movest against him. Did you hear that? Although thou movest against him to destroy him without cause. And Satan answered the Lord, and said, Skin for skin, yea, all that a man hath he will give for his life. But put forth thine hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. So God is lifting up that hand of protection. It sounds like he's the one who's doing it, right? But I'll show you here in a second. I'm getting far ahead of myself. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, he is in thine hand, but save his life. So went Satan forth from the presence of the Lord, ready, and smote Job. So this is Satan doing this. God is just lifting his hand of protection. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, he is in... and smote Job with sores and boils from the sole of his feet unto his crown. And he took him a potsherd to scrape himself withal, and he sat down among the ashes. Then his wife unto him, Dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and delete yourself, is what she's saying. But he said unto her, Thou speakest as one of a foolish woman speaketh. What? Shall we receive a good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil? And all this did not Job sin with his lips. Dude, that's rough. That's rough. But let me see if I missed something. Oh, yes. So now we're going to get to where everything gets returned to Job, right? Because he was faithful, even though he complained. And most of the book of Job is him complaining. But also this is where Leviathan and Behemoth are. They're mentioned in Job. And not only Job, they're mentioned in other places too. But I figured I would save those for other videos because I have some plans for those. So, anyways, Job 42, where is it? 8, okay. 8 through 11. Therefore, take unto you now 7 bullocks and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and offer up for yourselves a burnt offering. And my servant Job shall pray for you. So, here's something to think about too, with the red mist and why red mist needs to be spilled, right? Well, with Adam and Eve, what does Adam say? Bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. Nowhere is red mist, spoken about there, right? But what do we say today? You are my flesh and, right? So, it wasn't there originally. So that's interesting. But anyways, I digress. And my servant Job shall pray for you. For him will I accept, lest I deal with you after your folly. There's a whole thing that went on there, but anyways. And ye that have not spoken of me the thing which is right, like my servant Job. So he's not telling the truth about God, or not even speaking it at all, right? But anyways, so Eliphaz the Temanite, and the Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Namathite. See, this is why some people think that the Job is actually a pre-flood, but I don't know. And did according to the Lord commanded them, and the Lord also accepted Job. And the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then came there unto him all his brethren, and all his sisters, and all they had been of his acquaintance before, and did eat bread with him in his house. And they bemoaned him, and comforted him over all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. Every man also gave him a piece of money, and every one an earring of gold. So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning. For he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, and 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 she-asses. He also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. And I bet you these ones were probably more, listening to Job than the last ones. But anyways, so there's Job. But I want to talk about the Iron Halo. And I'm going to be talking about this in a video, have its own video. But anyways, so we talked about the hedge of protection, right? So this is something kind of like it. The Iron Halo is a revered part of the armoring of the chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, and is also a common Astartes award for valor. The Iron Halo is a halo-shaped ring that is positioned above the head of the wielder, usually mounted on the backpack of Space Marine power armor, but sometimes mounted in the gorget. The Iron Halo is a prestigious honor that is granted only to the most exceptional of the Astartes within a Space Marine chapter as a reward for uncommon initiative and valor. It is most often worn by the chapter captains and chapter master, though veteran Astartes and sergeants can also earn the right to add it to their armor in certain circumstances. The Iron Halo appears to share the same basic technological mechanisms as the Space Marine Chaplain's Rosarius, as they both produce a protective force field effect using poorly understood conversion field technology. All right, guys. So we have this hedge of protection for the Astartes, right? The ones who have proven themselves, right? It's almost kind of similar to what the hedge of protection is, right? When you're following the ways of God and doing it the best you can, you'll have a hedge of protection, right? But anyways, there was something I was going to say too. Oh, but yeah, a lot of the language in Job sounds like God is the one who's doing this. But as you'll see, I bring up again, where is it? Right? Where it says here, Satan, it says, now touch his bone and his flesh, right? But look who's the one who's doing it. So, Satan forth from the earth. So went Satan forth from the presence of the Lord and smote Job with sores and boils. But it says here, that this is where people kind of miss it, I guess you can say. They think God, right? Because it says touch his bone and his flesh. He's the one he's the one who's letting it happen, right? He's just taking his hand of protection away. But yeah, there you go. I want to thank all the people who support me and who subscribed, those who liked the video, disliked the video. I want to thank you all, and you guys have a wonderful day.